Hey, good morning. That music wake you up? That's superhero music. I'm Mike Robertson from the Sanctuary Church here in Austin. I'm so delighted that you have decided to join us today. Happy Father's Day to all dads out there. Happy Father's Day to everybody. Everybody has a reason to celebrate on this day. Let's see who's here. Hi, Susie. Hi, Hector, Darlene, Chloe, Cynthia, Mac, Glenn, Lisa, Richard, Karen, Lana, Dana, Holmes. Wow, good crowd today. And I know there are many more that don't ever comment, so we don't officially see their names showing up. But I appreciate each person that takes some time out of your day to tune in to YouTube during this live stream. It means a lot to me. It keeps me going. I look forward still to being able to communicate with you every week, even if it's through the computer and not face to face. How are you doing? It's been, 15 weeks? A long, long time, much longer than I think anybody believed it was going to continue, but it goes on, and so we go on. And I learned a little lesson this week about jumping the gun and the dangers of being too eager to get back to normal. A week and a half ago, week before last, I finally went to a barbershop, and it was so nice to get my hair cut again. But then this week, I think Wednesday night, I got an email from the barbershop that said one of our employees has tested positive for COVID. And so we're closing down the shop, we're cleaning everything, blah, blah, blah. And so I thought, wow, I hope it wasn't the barber that cut my hair, but regardless, I was right there. I was in that small space, and I realized maybe I'm letting my guard down a little bit too much. So since then, I've been very diligent. I'm still wearing my mask when I go out. I'm still sanitizing my hands when I go somewhere. And I'm not going somewhere as often as I did. And so I hope you're remaining safe too. The worst thing we could do, I think, is to get too eager to get back together and cause a big spike in the numbers of people with COVID. And for that reason, I want to tell you, we talked some about having a service next Sunday on the grounds here outside. We're not going to do that. It's just not safe yet. It's just not, we haven't seen a drop in numbers really at all, and certainly not enough to justify us saying, yeah, everybody come on back around. So I look forward to the day when we can do it, but it's not yet, okay? For today, or for now, we will continue to meet each Sunday morning here at 11 a.m. And also, if you haven't done it yet, I encourage you to join our Wednesday night Zoom chats. This Wednesday night, we got to hear a little bit about everybody's daddy. We got to learn their names, what they did, something they said or did that was memorable and made a difference in the lives of their kids. It was fascinating to me. We have a great time every week, and we learn so much about each other. It really does draw our community closer together. If you're missing out on that, you're missing a lot. So make sure you're on our email newsletter list. You can email me. If you don't get that, you should get at least 2 emails a week. One with the link for this Sunday service, which I'm assuming most everybody got since you're here. But the other email goes out usually on Tuesday or Wednesday morning that has the link for the Zoom chat. If you're not getting that, send me an email and I'll make sure you're on that list. My email address is mikerobertson@sanctuaryaustin.com. No spaces, no hyphens, nothing. Mike Robertson at sanctuaryaustin.com. And we'll make sure you're on the email list, and you'll know anytime there's a chance for us to get together virtually from now until the end of this quarantine stage. All right, I think that's all I have to announce this morning. So let's get into the message. You want to? The message today is called Snapshots Never Taken. Snapshots Never Taken. Just kind of hold that in the back of your mind while I start off on this different tangent here. In the middle of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, which so much stuff, you could really spend a year unpacking just that sermon. But there's a verse in the middle of it, which is probably not used very often for a Father's Day message, which is just the reason I chose it. It's right after Jesus tells us the right way we should ask for things. How do we ask God for things? Jesus says, ask and you will receive. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks will receive, and everyone who seeks will find, and the door will be opened to those who knock. Okay, so far so good. But the next words he says are these. Would any of you who are fathers give your son a stone when he asks for bread? Or would you give him a snake when he asks for a fish? As bad as you are, you know how to give good things to your children. How much more then will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? So today I want to talk about not finding a good gift for your Father, but I want to talk about good gifts from our Father. Father's Day is usually a good day to take some pictures. Now this year is a little bit different, of course, but maybe you will still get to see your dad today on your phone or your computer if you can't see him in person. Or lots of people this weekend post pictures of their fathers on Facebook or Twitter. I'm sure you probably have a box of photos somewhere or a scrapbook with pictures of your dad. It's great to have them. It's so much easier to take pictures now since everybody has a camera on them all the time. But in the old days, it was usually a special occasion when they broke out the camera. It wasn't an everyday thing. So consequently, I don't have a ton of pictures of my dad. I have a few dozen pictures of my dad, I guess, but it's never enough. And see, there are two problems here. The first one is my dad could never relax when there was a camera pointed at him. We would always say, "Smile, Daddy," and he would come up with something like this. He would get a deer in the headlights look with a silly grimace that looked nothing like his real smile, and he just couldn't be natural when there was a camera pointing at him. So you kind of had to sneak up on him. You had to catch him in a candid moment, and then there was a chance you could get a picture that actually looked like him. That was one of the problems. He just had a hard time taking a good picture. The other problem is that I just don't have pictures of a lot of the things I wish I did. I wish I had had this iPhone in my pocket when I was a kid because there were so many moments I would have liked to capture with a camera. Let me give you an example. Summertime, probably 1961. We're on a trip in the hot summer to go visit some relatives, and my mom and dad are in the front seat. My big brother and I are in the back seat of our un-air conditioned car in Texas in July. It's hot. I don't have to tell you how hot that is. All four windows are rolled down in the car, and we're going 60 miles an hour, so there is a hot breeze blowing through the car. It doesn't help much. There's only so much you can do in a hot car when you're a kid. Oh, you can play the alphabet game for a while, looking for letters on billboards. And I remember we always had to wait till we could see the Aquarina billboard to get a cue, unless you could find a Dairy Queen. But if you got really bored, you could climb up on the little shelf behind the back seat. You could lay there under the glass and pretend you were in an aquarium or something. Was it safe? No, it wasn't safe, but we weren't belted in anyway. We didn't have seat belts or car seats. Or you could stick your hand out the window and surf the air currents, you know. Anybody but me ever do that? Or you could just beg and plead for your dad to please stop at a gas station so we could get an ice cold glass bottle of Coca-Cola and maybe even a little bag of peanuts that you could pour into the top of the Coke bottle. Again, nobody did that but me? No, some of you did. Boy, there was nothing better than peanuts in an ice cold bottle of Coke. So good. My brother and I would get a little antsy. And just when we were about to reach the stage that's marked by saying, "Mommy's on my side of the car," just when we were about to reach that stage, my dad would do something magical. He would reach down under the front seat and he would pull out 3 comic books and he would hand them over the seat to us. Now, this was genius on my dad's part because the number was perfect. See, if he'd given us one comic book, we would have fought over it. If he'd given us two, one of us would have finished reading before the other one and would start bugging him to hurry up, come on, finish. But three was the perfect number because there was always one waiting for somebody to read next. So my dad gave us this trinity, if you will, of four color blessings, and that kept us occupied for many, many miles. Then, when we had read all three comics, we would sit back in our seats, still hot, and it would begin again, the restlessness, the poking, the teasing. And then my dad would reach under the seat and pull out three more comic books. It was magic. I don't know where they came from. It was like there was a mystical portal to another dimension under my dad's car seat. I never saw him buy a comic book. If we had driven, say, 1,000 miles, how many comic books would we have ended up with? Would we have buried underneath them? Would we have them up to our necks? I don't know. All I know is that he reached under the seat, he pulled them out, and they made the trip tolerable. Now, what would I give for a picture of my dad holding those comic books over the seat to my brother and me? I would give anything I have. That's a snapshot that was never taken, though I sure wish it had been. Or the time my brother was in FFA. You know what FFA stands for? In my family, it stood for Farming Failures of America. It's really Future Farmers of America, and it was a required subject in the little town where we lived. My brother was 4 years older than me, and as his first FFA project, he decided to raise a lamb. A cute little fluffy lamb for a while. In the backyard, my dad had built a lamb pen, and all was going well. The lamb was getting bigger and bigger. It was no longer a cute little fluffy thing. It was a big, burly sheep. And everything was going fine until one day when the lamb escaped. And my dad, my brother, and I were all running down the streets of our little town trying to catch it. And soon the neighbor kids got involved, and there were 12 or 15 people trying to capture this sheep. And there are a few things as elusive as a panicky sheep. They can run fast. They can turn on a dime when you least expect it. They're scared, and they're also stupid, which is a strange and not good combination. We chased this lamb for blocks all over the neighborhood until finally my dad made a flying leap and tackled that woolly wanderer. The lamb was probably, 80, 90 pounds by then, but my dad tackled this sheep and just wrapped him up and drug him to the ground. And in doing so, my dad managed to tear out the knees of both pant legs and scraped up his legs, something fierce. I'm not sure his knees were ever the same after that, but he caught that sheep. Boy, would I love to have a picture of that. No, actually, I'd love to have a video. I'd send it to America's Funniest Videos because it was quite amusing after it happened, watching all these people chasing this one little sheep. Well, I miss those snapshots that were never taken. My dad was a preacher for 60 years. And so when I was 6 years old on a Sunday night in church, and I felt this strange tugging in my heart, and I walked down the aisle, it was my daddy who was there to receive me. It was my daddy who put his arm around me and prayed with me. And a couple of weeks later, it was my daddy who baptized me. Boy, I wish I had a picture. I do, however, have a picture of the day when my daddy pronounced Lisa and I, husband and wife. But I still miss those snapshots that were never taken. We don't always know what's going to be significant at the time. My dad does still pop up sometimes, though. It's been 14 years since he passed away, but he pops up still a lot, and it's not always in a physical photograph. One time he showed up was the first time I preached at Riverbend Church. Now, Riverbend is a huge church with a gigantic stage and a huge video screen above the stage. And I was walking up the steps in front of the stage to start a sermon. And as I went up those 4 steps, I glanced up at that big screen and I saw something I had never seen before. It was this right here. That's not a bald spot. It's a halo. But until that moment, I didn't know that was there. When I reached my hand back there, it feels like there's still hair there. But I looked up and there it was, 15 feet wide for all the world to see. Everybody knew it was there except for me. But when I looked at it, I said, oh, my daddy gave me that. That's from my dad. He had one just like that. He had one too. And I still see my dad in odd little things I do. When I put a pan of biscuits in the oven, I get a stick of butter out of the refrigerator and I unwrap it and I slice it into 10 fat little pats of butter so that they're all ready when the biscuits come out. Why do I do that? Because I saw my daddy do it. I saw him do it dozens and dozens of times. I do it every time, and when I do, he pops up. He's there. I remember him. Or when I shake hands with somebody and they say, wow, you have a nice firm handshake, I say, that's my daddy. He was known all throughout South Texas for his handshake, and people would say, man, when your daddy shakes your hand, you know you've been shook. I'm not up to his standards, but I'm still working on it. And when I say stupid baby talk to my dog, y'all, I'm really bearing my soul here. I'm really getting confessional here. When I hold that little dog and I say, what is that little dog doing? Huh? What did she do? That's my dad. He did that. He did that all the time. Or when my wife says, you know what, I'd like to do this. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I'd like to do anything else but that. But I say, okay. That's my dad. He shows up all the time, and he reminds me of his presence. You see, fathers know how to give good gifts. Even as bad as you are, Jesus said, you still know how to give good gifts to your kids. Our fathers give us great gifts. They're not always fancy wrapped, store-bought gifts, but things that stick in our minds and our hearts and actually change us as people. And by the time we realize, though, what good gifts they have provided, it's usually too late for us to try and repay them. Not that we could anyway. We just don't have the resources to repay them. I mean, look, I gave my dad a piece of plywood on which I had burned his name with a wood burning tool. He gave me his name. I gave my dad a bottle of high karate aftershave. He showed me how a husband should love his wife and cherish her. I gave my dad an ugly tie. My dad gave me Jesus. It's not really an equal balance, is it? But see, it's a mistake to think that way. Love is not a scale which is always supposed to be equally balanced. Love is instead a stream that flows out. And along the way, it nourishes and refreshes and quenches, and it washes clean. It doesn't have to return to the source. Have you ever seen a river that ran in a circle? They don't do that. They don't go back to the source. They go from the source to the places where the water is needed. It reminds me of a story my dad used to tell a lot. He was the pastor of First Baptist Church in Los Fresnos, Texas. Now, if you've ever been to South Padre Island, you drove through Los Fresnos, Texas, and you passed right by First Baptist Church. It's right on the highway. Well, the custodian of that church also kept the yard, and it was immaculate. There was lush, deep carpet grass. The edging was razor sharp. There were colorful flowers all over and perfectly trimmed hedges and beautiful trees people would actually drive by and then stop at the church and say, "Who does your lawn?" This man loved his work, and he was just perfect at doing it. He was perfect in every way. Well, except one. See, he didn't like to roll up the water hose before he mowed the yard. And consequently, he was always running over the hose with a mower, and that's just not good for a water hose. They will begin to spring leaks. And this happened over and over again. But this man learned that the church had a charge account at the hardware store, and he could go down and charge $1.69 hose patching kit and come back and cut off the bad part of the hose and graft the good part onto another hose that had been damaged, and then everything was great. So one day, someone gave my dad a rose bush, and he decided he would put it in a nice pot, and he put it in there and put some dirt, put some potting soil around it, and then he thought, well, I better water this to make sure it gets a good start. And so he went out into the yard, and he began looking for a hose, and he finally found one that was laying across the lawn, and he grabbed the end of it and started to the faucet, and he saw that the hose had the wrong kind of connector on the end. So he traced the hose all the way to the other end, only to find the exact same connector. It was like if you had an extension cord that had prongs on both ends. It's totally useless. And my dad said, I knew if I looked around long enough, I would find another hose that had two of the opposite kind of connectors on. But out of that, my dad came up with a wonderful metaphor, a wonderful lesson. He said, God's love is like this stream of water that flows from him to us. And our reaction is usually, what can I do for God in return? And so we fill up buckets with water and we try to toss it back up to heaven, and it just doesn't work. God gives us all this love. Let's toss it back up to him. It doesn't work. And so we think, well, I'll just take the other end of this hose and I'll attach it to another faucet and I'll just turn them both on. And my daddy said, all that does is put pressure on the hose. You can put a whole lot of pressure on yourself trying to love your Heavenly Father as much as he loves you. And you ain't going to make it. You can't do it. You can't get there from here. Instead, God wants us to put a sprinkler on the end of that hose so that it will spread out and bring nourishment and growth and refreshment to all the dry and dying places around. Not to try to get it back to God, but to spread it out to the people who actually need it. See, a father's love is like that too. Let me go back to that scripture I shared at the very beginning. I stopped where Jesus says, as bad as you are, you know how to give good things to your children. How much more then will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? But you know what the very next thing he says is? The very next sentence out of his mouth is what we have come to call the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, see, we often interpret that to mean this. You do nice things for people, and they'll do nice things for you back. That's not what it says. That's not what it says at all. Think of what you wish somebody would do for you, and then do that for somebody else. Notice there's no promise of repayment. Jesus doesn't even say, you should expect that maybe it might possibly happen that somebody does something nice for you in return. He simply says, do for somebody else what you wish they would do for you. Not because you'll get something back. You're the hose. You're the conduit. Let the water flow to someone else. Our fathers give us good and perfect gifts. Look, here's an actual good photo of my dad. A newspaper photographer somehow managed to get him to not do a silly grin, but to relax and get this picture. This is what my dad looked like. But our fathers give us such wonderful gifts. Why do I call everybody in my family by some silly nickname? Because that's what That's what my daddy did. Why, when Lindsay was little and we would go on a trip, why did I fill a bag with little surprises and goodies so that I could pull one out when she got restless? Because that's what my father did. Why do I have to love you? Because that's what my father did. And his father before him. We are the conduits, and God's love is flowing through us. And the pleasure comes when a father learns that the gift is to be given and not to be received. You want to show your daddy that you love him? Love your children. Love your spouse. Love the people around you who desperately need a father figure in their life. Remember, Jesus said to Peter, if you love me, feed my sheep. Feed the sheep. Feed the sheep. Even if you have to chase them down the streets of your town and tackle them, feed the sheep. And be sure to take plenty of pictures along the way. Happy Father's Day to all of you. I love you, and love wins. We'll see you next time.